People will come, Ray. They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom. They'll turn up your driveway, not knowing for sure why they're doing it. They'll arrive at your door as innocent as children, longing for the past. Of course, we won't mind if you look around, you'll say. It's only $20 per person. They'll pass over the money without even thinking about it. For it is money they have and peace they like.
Ray, just sign the papers.
And they'll walk out to the bleachers. Sit in shirt sleeves on a perfect afternoon. They'll find they have reserved seats somewhere along one of the baselines. Where they sat when they were children and cheered their heroes. And they'll watch the game. And it'll be as if they'd dipped themselves in magic waters. The memories will be so thick, they'll have to brush them away from their faces.
Ray, when the bank opens in the morning, they'll foreclose.
People will come, Ray.
You're broke, Ray. You sell now or you lose everything.
The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been baseball. America has rolled by like an army of steamrollers. It's been erased like a blackboard, rebuilt and erased again. But baseball has marked the time. This field, this game, it's a part of our past, Ray. It reminds us of all that once was good, and it could be again. Oh, people will come, Ray. People will most definitely come.
Ray.
Go ahead, Joe.
What is up, everybody? Good morning. We are live on Diamond Talk. Myself and my partner, Tommy Florio. Once again, 90 minutes, a little more today. We got a special guest that probably take us closer to 2 hours. So welcome back to Diamond Talk. We talk about baseball. We'll go over so much stuff going on in the game today. Races, to talk about certain players, and so hopefully the history of baseball today with our special guest. But what's up, Tommy?
Joe, good morning. Welcome to Sunday morning, September 17th.
Yeah, great stuff, man. It's a big football day, but it's also our way of talking about the game of baseball that we love. And how was your week, bro?
Joe, the week was good. It's always busy. I got out. It's tough in the middle of the week. I went to a concert this week, so it threw my whole week off. When you get to be our age, throwing off the routine's a little rough. So I got to see one of your favorite, if not your favorite, Jeff Tate this week, who was absolutely amazing. He was great.
Cool. Yeah. I wish I could have gone, and I appreciate the offer, but I just work is crazy. But I'm glad you had a good time. Let's start today by talking about that clip you just played for a second, and
Sure.
and what the whole movie was about. In my eyes, I hate to even put this cliche, but a dream, being a little kid again, the relationship with his father in the movie that he talked about, and just the love and passion for the game. And it's great to see somebody like that just have that.
Oh, Joe, one of the best baseball movies of all time. If you don't tear up when Costner's character asks his father to have a catch, if you didn't tear up at some point, and I still do every time, I get a little choked up with it. For sure, you don't. But yeah, it's the story of baseball. I mean, and what it should be, and what it represents in our country and in our youth. I mean, growing up, baseball was king, and you played some form of it every day almost.
Yeah, and that having a catch, it was. It brings you back. I know it brings me back to me and my father on Clifton Avenue in Rosebank. Having a catch, I could just see it now. Him throwing the ball to me in the street, and then practicing and teaching me how to hit and throw it. it just brings back those great memories.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Listen, and we're gonna get to this, I think, a little later with Kevin Kernan when he comes on. But you couldn't walk around a block in our neighborhood growing up where there wasn't a wiffle ball game, a stickball game, two guys having a catch, and a park that didn't have a baseball game going on of some sort during the summer. And I just read one of Kevin's articles about it. And how different it is when you drive around and there are fields everywhere and you never see anybody playing the game. And that movie, that clip, this morning as I was sitting here thinking about something that we should open the show with regularly, and something of that ilk. And maybe we'll do a movie clip each week, something that kind of brings us back. But that reminds me of when we grew up, sitting on the stoop outside at night with your parents or the neighbors. Sometimes you're having playing a game in the street while your parents are all sitting out there, and TV's in the background playing the Yankee game or the Met game or whatever game, and that clip, that movie takes me back.
Yeah, I remember, and we played this in elementary school, punch ball.
Sure.
And to me, that's a form of baseball. You hit it. So I remember a lot of punch ball. We played a lot of wiffle ball together.
Yep.
I didn't play a lot of stickball, but I remember my father, talking about probably your father growing up in Brooklyn.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, playing that stickball. So there's so many forms of baseball that we played, and just it just always made me feel good, playing a game of baseball, and even watching a game or listening to a game. And I don't know if we talked about this in the past, but I actually like listening to a game on the radio rather than watching it. I like watching it, but there's just something about listening to a game on the radio. I just find myself immersed and so into that voice,
Well, you know what, Joe? I agree with you. I'm a huge radio fan, still are today. I mean, I grew up, in bed with the covers over my head, with the transistor radio in my hand, with the thing in my ear, listening to Ranger games or Knick games at night, or and in baseball season forever. You go to bed, school night, at 8, 9 o'clock, and you'd be in the middle of a Yankee game, and I'd be there listening until I fell asleep. And that I always have a love for radio, and if you can tell the story of what, as the announcer, what you're seeing, and make me, the listener, understand and kind of hang on your words, to me, that is one of the great art forms that we're losing in this generation of social media and YouTubes and all of that. And of course, or TV in general. I think the radio announcer, but yeah, baseball on the radio, Joe, I couldn't agree with you more. And
it to me, it all depends on how good he or she is on the radio. That's I remember listening to growing up in New York. I'm a Reds fan. You're a Yankee fan, but I remember Lindsey Nelson,
sure,
Bob Murphy,
sure,
and
Kiner,
yeah,
the whole crowd, yeah, sure,
Kiner's Corner, and now for almost 30 years, I think the Yankees fan has been spoiled by John Sterling.
Listen, he's taken a lot of criticism the last 5 or 7 years. I would say I've listened to John Sterling for 30 years. Driving home in a car, I've had jobs back in the day doing security where I'd listen to Yankee games while I was at work. And yeah, Joe, you're right. We are spoiled here. I think it's time for a fresher, newer voice here. But again, I don't know if the new generation will live up to those lofty expectations that you get listening to a John Sterling. But yeah, you're right, Joe. Our generation was spoiled on how great we had the simple things, and baseball being one of them.
Cool.
But hey, before you go, Todd, real quick, best baseball movie of all time, and I want to we'll do a segment down the line on this. Give me, I'll forget about best. Give me your favorite baseball movie of all time.
I like The Natural.
Yep.
I don't kill me here. Field of Dreams is not my favorite. You know what? I have to think about it, but I like The Natural. But I guess Field of Dreams is also up there. As one of my favorites. What's some of yours?
I'm a huge Bull Durham fan. I love
Okay.
the movie. What I love and 8 Men Out. I love
Yeah.
I love baseball movies, any sports movies where the main characters or the guys playing the game are legit baseball players.
Okay.
Right? Like you ever watch Major League? Tom Berenger never swung a bat in his life.
Right.
If you're a main character in a baseball movie, you got to be able to swing a bat and you got to be able to throw a baseball.
Oh yeah,
And if you can't be in the movie.
Yeah.
So Kevin Costner comes off to me as a legit baseball player. Whether he ever played high school, college, whatever, the guy can swing a bat and the guy can
Yes.
legitimately portray himself as a baseball player. And the same thing in the field in the 8 Men Out movie. While it's kind of a bummer of a story, watch D.B. Sweeney as Shoeless Joe Jackson. What a great swing he's got.
Right.
Molly Sheen can play. John Cusack can play. So that to me is what I want in a baseball movie. You can tell me a story, but if you can't play,
right.
You ever watch John Goodman in Babe?
Right.
It's embarrassing. So, but yeah, those are a couple of my favorites.
Yeah, I just have it on my tongue. I'm not a Yankee fan, but it's not my favorite, but I enjoyed 61.
Absolutely.
I liked it a lot. I thought Billy Crystal did a great job with that. And I even thought that the main character, he slipped my mind his name, but he's been in a lot of stuff. I think he did a real good job, portraying Roger Maris.
Oh, Barry Pepper. Yeah, Barry Pepper and Thomas Jane played Mickey Mantle. What's funny is they brought in, I think Barry Pepper, who played Roger Maris, had some sort of baseball experience, but Thomas Jane, who played Mickey Mantle, had never played, and I don't think he ever swung a bat. And he brought in former Dodger Reggie Smith to teach him and other guys on how to hit. They just look legit, and it came across okay. I didn't think it was terrible.
Yeah. I even think of Barry, who played Mickey Mantle?
Thomas Jane.
I think he had to learn how to hit a different way or something.
Well, I guess I don't know how they did it with the switch hitting, and I don't know how much that played into it. That is a great movie, by the way, and I agree with that. That's another one of those good baseball movies. I loved, two things for me in any sort of movie, but especially in a sports movie and a baseball movie, you got to stay true to the character and the events. Like don't add stuff like
right.
Don't add that, and the characters have to be able to be legit players. You can't go up there and watching what's his name in the Lou Gehrig story, Gary Cooper.
Right.
I mean, it looked like the guy never watched a baseball game in his life. I'm sorry, you can't pull it. I don't care how good a character you play. If you can't play the game, Joe, you can't be a baseball movie. It's retarded. No.
I liked 42, and it's so sad that actor had passed away so early.
Yes.
I even liked Harrison Ford in that. Call Me Crazy. I thought he was good in that.
No, I thought it was a well-acted movie. I don't know if I watched it close enough to. I've seen bits and pieces. Never watched the whole thing through and through. So that's one of those. On a cold winter night, I'm gonna catch up on. There's a couple of them that are probably out there that I want to see. That being one of them. But yeah, I've seen him. I don't even know. I can't think of the guy's name. It's Chadwick. Chadwick. I think it's Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, he passed away.
Yeah. So sad.
But let's, if we can, before we get into everything, we just mentioned Jackie. We mentioned Jackie Robinson, and I'm probably gonna get, if we have any fan mail or hate mail. So, but I gotta stay true to myself. He's in the Hall of Fame. And we probably know why he's in the Hall of Fame. The first African American player in baseball. He was in a national. We have Larry Doby, who was in the American League later on. But if we're going by stats, and we usually do, right, Tom, in sports?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Look,
that's got to be one of the overriding things. Sure.
If you look at his stats, I mean, he shouldn't even be. I mean, do you see anything here? I mean, there's nothing compelling. The average is 313. Okay, but then again, I think he's in for a different reason, and I wanted to get your take on that.
Well, listen, it's hard for me to say. I'm not a total stat guy. To me, it's the eye test first, and if I get close, like if I look at a guy and go, I think he is. I watched him play, and I'll go to his stats and say, you know what? Yeah. I just see enough of him that this guy's a legit Hall of Famer. With Jackie Robinson, if I go strictly by what's on his stat sheet, 11 years, 1,500 hits, 280 doubles, 55 triples, 140 homers, 760 RBIs. It's nice stats. Over the course of a season, his numbers would be 111 hits, okay, on an average show. 111 hits, 179 hits, 111 runs, 33 doubles, 6 triples, 16 homers, 87 RBIs, 23 stolen bases, and a 313 average. They're good numbers. They're not Hall of Fame, but we know why Jackie Robinson's in there. And, the old timers that I've talked to who watched Jackie Robinson will all tell you the same thing. He was never the best ball player. It was all about what he went through and what he did to get to change the culture of baseball and get the black athlete in. And,
right.
If that's why he's in, it's hard to argue it. So you leave it. But what I don't like is when you glorify and say the guy was a great player. Jackie Robinson was not a great player. He was a really good player who had the best temperament and was able to deal with what he had to go through.
So I don't want to get too much on it because we got a lot of stuff to go. But when you look at guys who get put, and listen, I don't. Somebody passes away, and then we want to put them in. I'm not into that. But I'm not gonna get mad at the situation. I'm not gonna. I don't want to be this guy that says, "Oh, I don't have a heart." I do. But you look at a guy like Roy Halladay, who passed away, and I don't think they waited 5 years. If I'm correct, I remember them not waiting 5 years with him. If I'm wrong, tell me. But I know he's in the Hall of Fame. But like if we're gonna do that, Tom, why don't we do it with Munson? Guys.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I'm looking at Roy Halladay's stats here. Okay. Let's see. How many wins so Roy Halladay won 203 games, 105 losses, 659 winning percentage. Let's see. Cy Young Award. He won 1 Cy Young, 2 Cy Youngs, and came close on 1 other occasion. Again, I never thought of Roy Halladay as a Hall of Famer. Is he in the Hall of Fame, Joe? Are you sure?
Yes. Yeah, I'm positive.
Okay, then he got in. Let's see.
You see on top?
Get right. Okay, yep. Sorry about that. Yep, you're right. So, to me, is Roy Halladay, and again, I don't ever want to come across as cruel or crass or whatever, but dying does not get you in the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry, it just doesn't to me. Either you're a Hall of Famer or you're not. You dying tragically, Thurman Munson died in the middle of a baseball season. Does not make him a Hall of Famer. Did I make the argument that Thurman Munson's a Hall of Famer based on who's in there? Yes, I can. Would I argue on merits alone? I think he comes up a little short. If it's my Hall of Fame, guys like Thurman Munson, Roy Halladay, a bunch of these guys, Don Mattingly, come up just a bit short, my opinion.
But let's be clear. If I'll get that for next week. I think he was put in before the 5 years. If I'm not, I remember them putting him in. But I'm just not. I'm not a fan of that stuff, you know. And I think it almost sends a bad message in my eyes.
In what way, Joe?
Because you're putting a guy in there because he passed away, you know, and it's horrific. I get it. Oh, but I almost feel like because he died, he got in.
Well, yeah. I let's see. He passed away in 17. So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So he would have been eligible in 2022 to get into the Hall of Fame. 5 years.
He was in way before. He was in way before.
Well, let's see when his induction into the Hall of Fame was.
He was in way before. He wasn't last year, Tom. No way.
I'm not arguing. So postseason no hitter. I'm just trying to legacy. Was elected to the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame in 2017.
Okay.
Retired his uniform number. Okay, I don't see when he was put into the Baseball Hall of Fame yet.
Well, I know he wasn't last year in the ceremonies,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, so Holliday's widow, Brandy, receiving his plaque during his induction ceremony to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 2019. So, Joe, you're correct. He was put in. It was put. Yeah, you're right, 100%. And I disagree with it, 100%.
Right. He like okay. First of all, if like here's my point, and I don't want to get too crazy on this, but you're supposed to wait 5 years.
Yep.
The guy already passed away. Okay, that's a fact.
Well, time out. Hold on, Joe. Time out. One thing I'll tell you is he retired in 2013. So he even though he died and he got in 19, he already passed. He had already retired from the game on December 9th, 2013. So he was retired for more than 5 years.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yep. So he wasn't. He didn't die as an active player. So
okay. So
make sure we get it right. That's
right. Okay, cool. I just I don't think.
But,
yeah. I'm not sure he'd play that he'd be in. I remember reading something about, you know, that I'll get that for next week.
Okay. Joe, you're breaking up a little bit on your end.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's better now.
I'm right here, bro.
Listen. Yep. Yeah. I got you. I think I definitely think that Roy Halladay's entrance to the Hall of Fame was, I don't want to say help, but I think there was some sympathy and some help with him getting in. I think he was a good pitcher. He had a couple of dominant years, but I wouldn't call Roy Halladay a Hall of Famer in my book.
Cool.
So,
what do you got?
Yeah.
Where you going to go now?
Let's get to the standings, Joe. Again, guys, Diamond Talk, that's Joe Gads. I'm Tom Flory. We're here every Sunday morning, 8 o'clock to 9:30. Special show today with Kevin Kiernan, former New York Post columnist and author, joining Joe and I at 9:30 for a quick half-hour chat. And we're glad you guys stopped by today. We're going to pop up some stats, some standings, Joe. You get to the standings if you don't mind, and share.
Well, I like what you said. I like what you said before. It's so sad. Let's try to get him above the 200 average, Stanton. It's crazy. Yeah, Joe.
You know, it's insane. It's insane. And I really want to get Kevin. I read Kevin Kernan's. He's got a website called Ball 9. I don't know if you.
Yeah.
So sure. I have to tell you, I am sad to myself that I did not discover this before this week. I read 2 or 3 of the articles. The one on the fungos that nobody hits fungos anymore, and Mound Chum about the game of baseball and the pitch clock. He's a fantastic writer, and what I love about him is he is no holds barred. He calls them out as nerds. He hates the analytic people. Joe, great guest by you. Great spot today.
Yeah. He's we actually have a mutual friend, so we're happy to have him talk about his years at the New York Post, and want to touch on his first interview ever, I think, with Thurman Munson. So that'd be cool.
Yep, Should be great, Joe. But let's you wanted to get to some of the postseason right now, where the standings are. So I got up here. The thing will go division by division real quick. Have a quick conversation. Take it away. It's all yours.
We talk about the surprise in Baltimore, right?
Yep.
So now, do you think? And the record is what it is, but do you think that it's Baltimore really being so good this year, or the rest of the division being not so good and watered down this year?
I think listen, Baltimore's been in the pits for a long time, and they've managed to bring up this kid Anderson, and they have a great young team. But yeah, I think listen, I think the old guard Yankees, Boston, being so bad this year, obviously helped. Tampa got off to that great start. They came back to the pack.
Right.
Are these teams at the top legit? I don't know. I don't know how much I will count on Baltimore when the time comes. The funny thing about the American League, Joe, is who's the best team in the American League right now? Like, Baltimore and Tampa have the best records, but when you scroll it down and you see Minnesota, who's habitually gets bounced out in the playoffs quick. When you see Houston at 83 wins, Texas, who's completely fallen at this point, who's really the best team in the American League at this point?
Who's the best team in the American League, but who has that postseason experience? And you have it right there. Even though I despise the team, we have to look at the Astros there as the last 5 or 6 years having that postseason. So yeah, we always talk about the regular season stats, but the postseason, as you know, is a different animal, and they're going to have some momentum, not from this year, but the momentum of their past and the experience of the playoffs.
100%. Listen, Houston gets to the playoffs, which obviously it looks like they're going to. There's no doubt in my mind their pitching staff. They brought back Verlander with the trade from the Mets at the trade deadline, and their experience is going to give them the leg up. I mean, you get into a battle, you're in Game 6. With Baltimore, Houston's experience is going to pop. That you're 100% right, and you're right. I hate them. I wish all sorts of craziness on Jose Altuve every time he steps to the plate. I do. I did it with George Brett when I was a kid. I do it with Altuve. I freaking hate the guy.
I'd like to call a future MVP right there in the Seattle Mariners, the kid Rodriguez.
Rodriguez. Yeah. Oof, what a great player.
I just got goosebumps because I love kids like him, Tom, that seem to do it right. De La Cruz, another one who just seems to do it right, almost like these 5-2 plays. But this kid Rodriguez on Seattle, man, future MVP, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, he reminds me of a young A-Rod. I know that people don't. He reminds me of a young A-Rod. Now, hopefully, he doesn't. Hopefully, his career mimics A-Rod's without the steroids.
Right.
But the kid can simply play the game, and these kids. I mean, you brought up De La Cruz. He's 6'5" playing shortstop. I mean, when I grew up, Freddie Patek played shortstop. The 5'8" guy. Fred the Chicken Stanley, and some of these guys. I mean, if you had a shortstop that was bigger than 5'10", Bucky Dent. I mean, these guys were midgets. Joe, they were midgets compared to these guys today. I mean, these guys are 6'5" playing shortstop, and they look. And you're right. I love watching a kid De La Cruz. I mean, that's just the way you want to see somebody play baseball. And you're right. This kid Rodriguez, unfortunately, he's stuck in Seattle, and that may be the bad part. Because no matter what happens out there, they just can't. I mean, they had one of the greatest teams I've ever seen and couldn't win a World Series. Was it 2001? I think that team was.
That
2000. Yeah, it had the one. I think it was 2000, if I'm not mistaken. Yankees beat them. It seemed like David Justice was hitting a home run every other at bat in that series. Right. But yeah, again, Joe, this year, I mean, when you scroll up, I mean, I have no faith in Minnesota.
No.
Baltimore and Tampa. Tampa's got a little bit of postseason juice too for me. They always, I don't know how they do it, but whoever they seem to throw out there plays well. I don't know if it's the organization, the way they teach the game, or if it's the manager, Joe. But that team, They sell off all their big name, big time players, and every year they seem to put out a pitching staff that is just better than everybody else's.
Right. And like you said, I remember this year, they started out strong. You know, they could still get let's say they could still get 98 wins, maybe. I mean,
Yeah.
I look at probably them and Houston in the in the AL championship game, maybe something like that.
Yep, I would agree with that.
You know,
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, and while we hear a couple, obviously the Yankees, which we'll get to a little bit more, Boston, I think the White Sox, and I'm going to say the Angels are the biggest disappointments for me this year. Joe, how do the Angels, with probably the two best players on paper in the game today, Ohtani and Trout, not ever get you get to the second half of the season and they're just competitive. They're not in the talks other than are they going to trade Trout or they're going to trade Ohtani. I mean, there's other than that, they're just not they're not part of the conversation.
Yeah, I always question. I know people love Trout, and I get it. I'm not a huge Trout guy. I just think, and he really disappointed me in the WBC against Ohtani. I mean, when he came up to plate, I literally said to myself, he's going to strike out. I just felt it. I just never. I don't have a lot of faith in him. That's my opinion. When push comes to shove, and with him and Ohtani, what are they going to do? Are they going to keep them together? I don't see it. I don't see it. And the team, how has the team, rallying around these two, which has been bothering me lately with this team, that you see these two superstars, but it's almost like it's too much for the team in a way. I look at that and you always wonder, what that clubhouse is. Do they get along? Could that be a problem with that kind of team?
Sure. And here's the thing. I said it from the beginning. How could you, if you're the Angels, you're never making the playoffs with these two guys. When I say never, you haven't made the playoffs with these two guys. You haven't put any sort of a pennant run to try to win the division. Yet you're going to pay Ohtani probably $50 million. You're already paying Trout $40 million. So you're going to pay $90 million a year to two players and a team that just doesn't win. So if you're going to spend that kind of money, you got to be a competitive team, and they're not. So I never thought they were, other than bringing Ohtani back as a publicity stunt. I don't know why that they would even venture to try to sign this kid. You're going to pay almost $100 million a season to two players, one of which, Trout, I love the guy as a player. He never plays. Joe, he hurt his wrist this year swinging a bat, and then came back and went out again. Mike Trout is a great physical tool baseball player, but he may be, and I know this is crazy because he's a multiple MVP, may be the most overrated player.
Well, we've talked about this. They have him on ESPN's 15th greatest player of all time.
Yeah.
I can't even comprehend. I can't even comprehend how he's the 15th greatest player of all time. It's an insult to players from yesterday. But yeah, go ahead.
Before you bounce off him, you're right, Joe, because you've never been relevant. Your teams are never in it. You don't finish seasons. Right. He has such great stats early in the year that he can miss a ton of games and come back and still win the MVP. I get he's a great player. Physical tools, got it all. But I'm not putting it in there when you can't get your team one time into a postseason and be a big player. I just can't put you there. You want to tell me he's the 15th greatest player with tools? I get it. He's physically great. Is he a great baseball player? Yes. Has he done great in baseball? Yes. Am I putting him in my top 40? Probably, maybe. Physical gifts, but there's a ton of guys I'm taking ahead of him, including Jeter, including guys who just show up every day and play the game.
Tom, that's a great word you just used. Just show up. And talking about Ohtani and Trout, you wonder and this could be more of a conversation maybe for a different show, but today we'll talk about a little bit. Do these players today, Tom, do the players of today want to win, or do they want to just get paid? Because if you're gonna tell Ohtani, yeah, we'll give you, I think they were talking about $700 million. Okay, let's play a stupid game now. Let's say they give this guy $700 million to stay, in California. He knows he's not winning, but he's getting paid. So and I'd love to get later on, we talked to Kevin Kiernan about this, his thought about this. What's the mentality of today's players? Is it the commercials and making as much money as we can, or do they want to win?
It's a great question, Joe. And I'll tell you, I think it's about the money. And I'll give you an example that's not baseball. of the mentality of the player and the unions today. I'm going to go outside the show a little bit and we'll use football. Daniel Jones. Okay. Daniel Jones for the Giants. Okay. I love Daniel Jones. The Giants had no choice but to sign him. So Daniel Jones knows the Giants are in cap hell, right? He knows that to build a team, this team needs some money, and they need to be able to sign some players, sign some of their own players. And one of his best friends on the team, Saquon Barkley, is a guy out there who the Giants need and want, but they don't want to overpay because they can't overpay at a position that's less value.
Right.
Okay. So instead of Daniel Jones saying, hey, you know what? Instead of paying me $44 million a year, pay me $38 million a year and give that money to Saquon Barkley, where I know it's overpaying him based on the current what the running back is worth, but we need him for the next 3 years on this team to be successful. I'm sorry. You're getting $38 million or you're getting $44 million. Is it that big a deal, in the grand scheme of life? Even if you did it for 3 years and say my fourth year, you pay me the $44 million. That is a guy. And again, it's all about, you can go out there. And I know this is easy to say because it wasn't me, but if you really, really cared about winning, if you really, really cared, there's a spot where you go, pay me a little less and give it to the next guy so we have a better team next year. And other than Tom Brady of this generation, I've never seen a guy put the team ahead of himself.
I know he already won 4 MVPs and a horrific injury last week. I'm sure you talked about it with Jeff on the show last week. And I'm a huge Aaron Rodgers fan. I got to keep it real. Always loved him. They beat my team last week. I got to give it to the Jets. A win is a win is a win. You know that.
Sure.
So
absolutely.
I think he just did it, Tom. Didn't he do it with his contract? He made some room.
Yes. Yeah, he did. He took I don't know if he took less money or spread it out a little bit, but he made it so that the Jets could bring in a couple of players. So, it's far and few in between, and I get it. Players, you get that opportunity maybe once in your career, you go out and do it. But the mentality has to be, if I'm paying a couple of guys on the team too much money and I can't bring in anybody else, what's the sense? And I guess that's the point for going back to the Angels and Ohtani and Trout. And again, I'm a Mike Trout fan. I think he's got all the tools in the world. But Mike Trout may be one of the most overrated players in the game because he's not there in October, because he's usually not there in September. And his teams are meaningless. Because they never come up big in a big spot during the regular season.
And I know we always say, and more power to, don't blame the player, but I don't believe that anymore, because the player is getting the money. So, the player has to make all the money while he can. A career is not long. I get it. Injuries, you want to make the most money. Listen, I don't begrudge anybody for making the money that they want to make. But I think the player has to take some responsibility, because I think we're looking at Trout in that Charles Barkley, Dan Marino, Ernie Banks, the great players who are never going to win.
Yeah, he may be that guy. Yeah, that might be his thing. And I have a note on the sheets where I'm asking what's Trout's legacy, and if it goes this way for his career and he retires 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 4 years from now, whatever it is, what is his legacy, Joe? Is he Dan Marino? Is he the guy who never he's the greatest player who never won I mean, what is the Mike Trout legacy? Joe Ganz's thoughts.
He's not Jeter to me. He's not a winner. He's not a guy who goes up there and does the right things at the right time. He's a guy that, I even think we over-glorified this guy. Yes, he has 3 MVPs. I look at the competition around him. How was that? But his legacy to me is it's still out there because unless he wins that championship, I don't know. And then we're going to put him up there as the greats of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Without winning, he's not a Jeter that goes out there every day and just does I got goosebumps again thinking about Jeter, and I'm not a Yankee fan, but I love Jeter for everything he stood for. I think almost if you look in a dictionary, Tommy, and you see the word baseball player, you could almost put Jeter next to that. Just did everything right and was a great player. Did he have the stats that Trout did? He had some pretty good stats. That great, I think, above 310 average career-wise. I think the 6th most hits of all time. We don't give Jeter enough credit, but the Trout's legacy, I'm not sure, bro, because it's not done.
No, it's not. But listen, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. At this point, if he retired tomorrow, Mike Trout's going to be a Hall of Famer. There is no doubt in my mind. Where Trout lands when I think of this generation, I'm not sure yet. And it's going to be an individual thing. He's going to be a top 10 player of his generation. He's going to be in the top 50 all time, regardless. Do I put him there at this moment? He's got to give me something in October. You got to put someone on a resume in October.
Can you bring up his stats real fast? Because I don't think we do this enough. I think we hear a player, and I could be wrong, but I don't remember looking at his stats and being like, wow. I don't remember his stats being that great. He's going to go down as probably in the top 10 strikeouts of all time.
Yeah, that's this generation. That's the problem. Yeah, again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that won't. To be honest with you, Joe, I mean, I could give you Mickey Mantle, Reggie Jackson. They're all both Hall of Famers, and they're probably if they're not in the top 10 right now, they're close. So
Reggie's number 1.
Yeah. Now again, I'm not the biggest Reggie fan, but let's see, Mike Trout stats share.
Now I could be wrong, but I remember looking at him and Harper recently.
Okay, so Mike Trout. See, to date, Joe. 1,600 hits in 13 years, 310 doubles, 52 triples, 368 homers, 940 RBIs, which to me seems really low at this point. His 162 game average is 120 runs, 177 hits, 34 doubles, 6 triples, 40 homers, and 102 RBIs with a 301 batting average. The numbers are there, Joe. They're not off the charts, but the numbers are there. He's got rookie of the year. He's got 1, 2, 3 MVPs. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4 second place MVP votes.
Right.
1, 2. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Silver Slugger awards. The numbers are there. I get it.
If you look at the whole career, but when you look at the whole career of the home runs and RBIs, they like the RBIs surprised me a lot with him. The RBIs surprised me a lot.
Yeah, if you look at, he's only had 3 years over 100 RBIs. Now, if you go back to if you look at the stats for games played early on, so let's say from 2012 to 2019, 139, 157, 157, 159. All of a sudden, you get 114, 140, 134. Now you get the 53, 36, 119, and 82. So right now, Mike Trout is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons over 140 games played out of 13. So that means half of his career, he's played less than 140 games in a season. To me, that's a problem. That's an issue. Now, the numbers over the course of a season, Joe, are pretty good. I mean, those 6 seasons are amazing.
Right.
But if you don't watch out, his career could be Don Mattingly.
But you did say, and I agree, you have to be the best player of at least 5 years. And I stand corrected. he was unbelievable from 2012 to like 18, right?
I would say to 18.
I
But
mean,
again, that's Don
yeah,
Mattingly. Now, Don Mattingly fell off the last 5-7 years of his career. Now,
right.
Mattingly didn't win 3 MVPs, but Mattingly was the best player in the game for 5 or 6 years, and he can't smell the Hall of Fame. Trout's
Does
getting in.
does
Yeah.
Trout have any Gold Gloves? I forget.
Nothing's listed on here. I mean, I don't know. Let me see if they showed someplace else. Batting average, advanced batting, postseason batting, only one postseason, 2014 fielding appearances, All-Star awards, Silver Sluggers. I hate WAR. I hate the friggin' stats.
He has two. He has two. He has 2 Gold Gloves.
Yep, 2 Gold Gloves. So again, he's going into the Hall of Fame. Now, again, for me, while people are going to say I'm crazy, this is Don Mattingly like. You're the best player by far. You are top of your game. You are the best player for 6 years. After those 6 years, there's a steep decline, and it's all because of injuries. Does that affect it? No, he's going to the Hall of Fame, and he will be considered because of 3 MVPs and all that stuff. But there is a case to be said that his career will fall short of where it should have been.
Yeah.
So
great player. I think and he doesn't have to win a championship, like he just said. He's already in the Hall of Fame. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But do these players today? Do they? I look at them and I see all the commercials and all the bling around them. If you want to use that word, do these players, do they want to win today? How much I don't know, because I'm not these players.
No.
Do they want to win, or is it all about the glorification of me and being on the billboards and the money? I'm not sure these players are hungry like years ago. But to be fair, the money wasn't around years ago, so we don't know what would have happened then, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know either, Joe, and I don't know how to equate today's ball players. Maybe I don't relate to the younger player. Yeah, I don't know the answer. I don't know who the next generation's Jeter is, or the next that hard-nosed player, or the guy who shows up every day and does his job, because analytics get in the way. Is the guy taking a day off because he wants it, or is he taking a day off because the team does it? And I'll give you a great example. I think it was last year or the year before. I think it was the year before. And Ohtani was coming to town to face the Yankees. The first time he was coming in to pitch against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. And it's early in the season. And the Yankees had just come off a day. They had played a weekend series. They were off on Monday, and they were playing Tuesday. Ohtani was pitching, and Judge sat down. They didn't play Judge. And I was furious about it on the Thursday night show, because this is what you want in baseball. I want to tune in, 7:05 or let's say 7:15, and catch Judge getting up against Ohtani. This is the matchup. You're a baseball fan. This is what you want to see. And Judge is not playing in an April game on a Tuesday after a day off, facing the best pitcher or the most hyped pitcher in the game. That's the difference. If I'm Judge, I'm tearing down my manager's door, and I'm telling him I'm getting up second in the lineup, whether you put my name there or not. And that's the problem I have with today's ball player. Kick in the door, throw something, hit the water cooler, do something, and tell me you want to play the game.
Great point. I just watched an old clip of, I think, Mike Messina. Joe Torre was coming to take him out, and Mike Messina to go back in the dugout. I like that. I like that in Scherzer. They want to be out there, and I gotta say, if my guy is representing the team, he knows it's all on him. And if he's got some more in him, as a manager, you don't always have you're not always right. We're not always right in anything in life. But I think as the manager walking out, maybe you see he's a little tired, and he's telling you, I like that. So we don't see enough of that in a way. I'm good, coach. Leave me in. But
yeah, Yeah, no, and so Joe, I don't know if analytics gets in the way of the players of today doing what they want to do and how they want to do it. I don't know. I think that they open up a book and say, well, against this pitcher, this guy today has been really good. The guy's batting 100. Guy, why are you playing him? Well, 20 years ago in the farms on a Tuesday, he had a seeing eye single off him. I got to put him in the lineup today. I'm going to take out my best player. That's the problem I had with analytics. If you tell me you're managing or you're running a team based on what you see and you use a little analytics to kind of help you out in a rough spot, I get it. But when you're managing the game and you're using the book, I got no interest.
What is your take? I'm not a fan of this at all. What is your take of the catcher not being a catcher? My point is the catcher doing this time every pitch, looking over to have the manager give him a what pitch to throw. It drives me crazy because I want my team to play. I want that connection with my pitcher and the catcher. I want them to do that. I don't have to have and then, but Tom, you said it. It goes back to here's the manager with the iPad and Joe Smith's up. Okay, pitch him a ball, pitch him a strike. What's your take on that? If you're a fan of that.
I'm not. I mean, I get to a certain point where you're looking over at the dugout when there's runners on base. You want to run a play if they want to call a pitch out. But as a guy, I've caught obviously much lower levels. So I never. But as a catcher, you got to feel. You know what the pitcher's throwing, what he's throwing well,
right.
What the umpire's talking to you about in your ear. You know what the umpire's calling. As a guy who's caught baseball games or softball games, to me, I would hate it, and I hate it as a fan. As a catcher, you should hate that, and as a pitcher, you should hate that because there should be that symmetry between you two guys where you're thinking exactly the same way. And if a game is right, the pitcher should see the sign, and he should throw the ball. And I hate when pitchers shake off a sign. To me, the catcher's the boss, and he knows what sometimes what you can't do better than what you think you can do.
I remember an old story of Tim McCarver catching for Bob Gibson, and Tim McCarver, he called timeout, and as he's walking to the mound, Bob Gibson goes, "Go back, because you can't hit me either." He didn't want to hear from his own catcher.
Well, that's the old school mentality, Joe, that I think is lost in today's game.
Yeah.
Even going back as close as like the Randy Johnsons and the Kurt Schillings and Roger Clemens of the world, those guys were just nasty, and I missed that in the game today. I love, we talked about it last week where the guy threw inside and the guy dies and Acuna was benches were emptying out. Like I miss the old school baseball where there's justice out there. But yeah, as a baseball fan, I want my catcher calling the game. And if you can't call a game as a catcher, I get it. You're a rookie, you come up, you need a couple weeks to get. I get it at that point. But short of that, if you're a veteran catcher, you've been on the team for a month, 2 months, you should know your pitchers, you should know the hitters in the league, and you got to be able to call your own game. I couldn't agree with you more.
We always talk about, and we've had some fun with this, and we talked about who's the greatest catcher of all time. I don't go there no more. I'm happy with everybody who's played the game. But we also look at this. I like to know who was the best catcher at calling a game. Who.
Wow.
We look at catchers. Oh, who has the most home runs? Who threw the most guys out? But I love to talk to these pitchers and find out. Was Berra the best at calling a game? Was it Carlton Fisk? Was it Molina? Who I love Molina. I think his 9 gold gloves should be talked about. He's one of the smartest catchers I've ever seen. But at these catchers, who was the smartest catcher at calling a game? I never really got into that,
Yeah, I'd like to think about that one, and and we're going to have Tommy John on soon, and I want to ask him how important was it for your catcher to call a good game? Maybe we overrate it. But I'd have to think about best baseball staffs, pitching staffs. And then that would be the guy I would lean to. And I'm not sure at this moment who I would put in that spot. I mean, I saw a lot of guys call games, the Munson Fisks, a little bit of bench. Those guys called great games. I never thought Ivan Rodriguez was I thought he was the best arm I've ever seen, one of the best defensive catches I've ever seen. I don't know if I put him in there, but that's an interesting conversation, Joe.
Yeah, we should maybe get definitely Tommy John would be great. I don't know if we can get other guys, but yeah, let's try to put that for Tommy John. That'd be a good question. How important is it not having that, not only to catch it to hit a home run or throw a guy out, but to call the right pitch at the right time?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, and one thing we need to get into one of these weeks is they talk about guys framing a pitch, which I think is the most overrated thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Framing a pitch. The only thing I would say is, a guy who can keep his glove still is important, because when you move the glove, you throw the umpire off. But framing pitches, to me, has got to be the most overrated thing I ever hear talk about. He framed that pitch. Dude, he caught the freaking ball where it was thrown. That's it. Right. That's what you do.
One thing on that. So if we do ever get these automatic, no more umpires, if we get the automatic strike zone, if we ever get that, I believe this is how it works. If you ever been to one of these things or you ever watched it on TV, I think that they actually call the pitch before it hits the glove. I'm pretty sure before it hits the glove.
Where it crosses the plate.
Yeah. So here's where framing is going to be really a problem, because I think if that computer is going to call that pitch like right away, now I can't do this then because it's already called. So I hope we don't get into that, like, strike. Oh, but wait. So,
yeah, again, I don't know if I like or dislike the robot umpire behind the plate. Now I think umpiring today, especially behind the plate, is horrendous.
Right.
I think the strike zone has been eliminated. They basically call whatever they feel like as a strike. So I'm caught in the vortex of, I hate the robot umpire. I love the game where humans are involved.
Yeah.
I want the bad call. I want the error to be made. I want the guy to make a mistake on the base path, because it affects the game. It changes the game, and that's part of the game. Being human is part of baseball. It's you don't run. What are we gonna do? Play it on a video game and people are gonna show up and watch on the screen? I want that, Joe. I want that element in the game, and you adjust to the umpire behind the plate. You adjust to what you're the pitcher. You have to adjust. What is he calling as a strike? I got to pitch there as a hitter. I have to adjust to that.
We have to be careful, Tommy, what we want in life. Sometimes less is more. If we're going to take that home plate umpire out, maybe we could do it at first base. We got to be careful. We got to be careful.
100%, Joe. Yeah, listen. At some point, you put a sensor there, or you put something there. Now they have all these different cameras. Yeah, you're right. They can eliminate the umpire pretty quick out of the game. One umpire behind the plate. He's the guy who makes all the all the rule decisions during the game, and you can eliminate three guys. So if I was baseball umpires union, I would be fighting this tooth and nail, because to me, this, again, we're stripping down the game as we know it, that we love, with all these different rules, making the bags bigger, all the innovations, as they call it. Baseball's the one sport that should just be left alone and leave it the way it was, and just move it along. Get in the box, swing the bat, throw the ball.
Right. Guys, we are live Diamond Talk every Sunday morning. Me and my boy Tommy Florio talking baseball. Our special guest in a little while, the great Kevin Kiernan, sports writer, columnist, author. We'll talk to him. I don't want to get too much more on this, but I've thought about this, so I don't want any rule changes. I'm good. I don't want anything. I'm good. But have you thought about this, Tom? Baseball is the only major sport where the dimensions are different in every field. Football, basketball, and hockey, it's this. I think football is 100 by 55, or I think in hockey and basketball it's about 90 Hockey's like 200 feet. I think basketball is like 92 feet. But it's the only sport where every field is different. Do you like that?
I do.
Okay.
I think what I like about it is you build your team around it. You're the Yankees. You want a lot of left-handed pitchers, so the guys have to bat right-handed. You want left-handed bats in your lineup because you want to take advantage of the short porch. So yeah, if you're a Red Sox, you want right-handed hitters to hit them off the wall out there. You want guys who could play that wall in left field. So yeah, Joe, I do. I think I think different dimensions, different stadiums. You build your team around it, and when you come in there, it forces the other team to adjust their lineups,
right?
The pitching staff, their rotations through. So yeah, I do love. I don't like it. I love it.
Speaking about the Green Monster, there's a couple of plays that if that wall wasn't there, I think Dwight Evans, who was an excellent player, and they say the wall actually prevented him from having 150 more home runs. That would have put him over 500. So you look at that. Like you remember Dave Winfield, great Hall of Famer. He was a line drive hitter. So if he went to Boston, he wouldn't have had as many home runs because remember him always line drive home runs.
Yep. Well, I'll give you one, Joe. Think about if you were a Yankee in the 50s and home runs to right center field or the left center field were 460 feet away.
Right.
How many DiMaggio hit 350 homers, struck out, I think less than 100 times for his career.
Yeah.
Think about how many more homers he would have had or Mantle would have had if they played in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
So again, but that's the love of the game is you go out there and your team is built on your stadium. I love these new stadiums. Camden Yard. I love Camden Yard. I love some of these new stadiums. They're beautiful, but please don't make it where center field is X and on every team in every field. Yes, first base is 90 feet away and the mound 60 feet 6 inches. That should never change for the most part.
Yeah.
But the fact that the dimensions of the field differ, I truly think it makes baseball the game it is.
I think center field is usually around 410, 420, right? I mean, so I'm okay with that. One stat real fast, just throw this out there. Tony Gwynn struck out 188 times in the decade of, I think, the 80s or 90s. Think about that.
Yeah.
He struck out 188 times in a decade.
Yeah.
Guys are doing that in one season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. Again, I want to get to this more when Kevin Kiernan's on because I want to talk about the dumbing down. We talked about it a little bit last week, how, the game of baseball has changed to the point where, again, I'm listening to them talk about Stanton last night and they're raving about the guy's hitting $190. I mean, here's a guy who 4 or 5 years ago was an MVP hitting 59 homers and he's hitting $190. He hits a laser beam homer in a meaningless game in September, and we're ready to carry him off the field. So yeah, that's a big problem with the game today. Is that nobody cares about stats in the sense the only stats that matter is arc angle, exit velocity, WAR. Stick it in your ass. I hate it. I do.
Tom, do you have 2 minutes to pull up this guy's stats, Stan Musial, and I want your head to explode. We don't ever talk about this guy as we should. Listen to me. You're going to be, I can't even, probably 360, 350 every year, 340. I remember his stats being I haven't seen him in a couple of years. Stan Musial's stats are just off the charts, man. I remember unbelievable stats. I mean, you don't talk about him enough because where he played probably in Missouri.
Yeah, here it comes up now, Joe. You got it. You want his year ends? So his 162 game average, 149 runs, 194 hits, 39 doubles, 9 triples, 25 homers, 104 RBIs, 86 walks, 37 strikeouts for a season average, and 331. Yeah. But now, if you look at his year by years, Joe, I mean, 357, 365, 376, 338, 346, 355, 336, 337, 330, 351 at age 36. And then you tail it off. But Joe, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're not, I don't know why. I don't know why. You'd have to, really,
How many years of 200 hits? 5 or 6?
200 hits. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 200.
6.
And then he had 197, 192, 194, 195, a bunch of 180s and 170s. So, there's a guy, played 22 years, and more than half of it, he had 200 hits. I mean, a machine.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's machine like. And if I showed you Lou Gehrig, if I showed you Yogi Berra, your head would explode when you compare these guys. Now, again, I don't know. Is the game better then? Is it better? Is it better today? The pitchers are better, so the hitters aren't as good. What has changed it so dramatically, Joe? Where I can look up Stan Musial's good years and great years and compare it to the great players of today, and it doesn't compare to a guy who most people, if you mention his name, wouldn't even know who he was and who he played for. That's the sad part of this with today's players, thinking that the Stantons of the world, the Trouts of the world are the greats of all time, when guys like Stan Musial get overlooked.
Yeah, and it's, well, if you talk about Stanton, would we be really talking about him if he played for Kansas City? No, think about that. He played in Florida. Now he's playing in the biggest, probably the greatest franchise in the sports. Let's call it how it is. Yankees, most championships in sports, I think 27 to date. So when you talk about having to, in New York, maybe Stan Musial would have got more recognition, but you talk about a guy that's, let's have him over 200. He's almost at 200. It's just, when we talk about these and these commentators, your head just spins of these. This is what the best of the best is today. It's sad.
Well, again, there's two different things. You could say to me, Tom, Giancarlo Stanton's one of the best players today. Okay, maybe I can't argue today, but you can't call them all-time greats and then compare them to those stats. You can't look at those guys, who hit 300 and change and hit 25 and 30 homers. See, here's I will sacrifice 20 homers a year if you give me 40 more batting average points, because that means you're getting on base more. That means you're driving in more runs. That you can hit a meaningless homer in the middle of September and hit 4 or 5 of them, and you just went from 35 to 40. Don't mean anything to me. Give me the guy who, over the course of the year, gets 1 or 2 extra hits a season per week. That's what I want. That's the guy I want on my team.
Ricky Henderson, Hall of Famer. I was a big fan of his, but I think over 1,300 stolen bases. How many stolen bases? You just brought up a great point, Tom. Meaningful. How many stolen bases were meaningful? We don't know.
Yeah.
Pete Rose talks about Joe Morgan, who I think had over 600. Another guy who we don't get enough credit, not because I'm a Reds fan, I keep it real, but over 600 stolen bases. Rose said he could have had so much more, but he stole the bases when it counted.
Yes, well, that's the difference. Mickey Mantle had a great quote. He said, if I knew stolen bases were going to be so popular, I would have stolen a few more during the season. He said, I stole them when I needed to, but why put myself in a position to get thrown out unless it meant something? Now, Ricky Henderson was a weapon. They used to say it was the walking triple. If he got on base, the next thing you looked up, he was on third. It was meaningful back then, and most of them were, Joe, because they were part of the game. If you're Ricky Henderson's leading off for your team, and the next thing you know, there's one out, he's standing on third because you just stole 2 bases, and he puts you in a position to score another run on a sac fly or a ground ball. That's meaningful. Stealing a base, up 6 runs means nothing to me. That's a meaningless stat. But the stolen base, the bunt, the hit and run were huge parts of the game that have just disappeared. We've talked about this a million times. But, again, how, it's funny. If you and I put together our top 9 or put together our greatest baseball team of all time, I wonder how many of today's generational players would actually make the team.
How far are we going back?
Well, again, it's your version of the greatest team. There's no, to me, I like to keep it to players I've watched, but it would be hard for me to put together a baseball team that didn't include Babe Ruth or Lou Gehrig on it. I mean, how could you do that? But you can narrow it down and say only players you watch play. So to me, it would start at 75, 76, where I could really go back and say, these are guys I watched for a good part of their career, and I think they're the best at what they did. So I always like to preface it by saying it's based on, for me, players I watch, because I never saw those other guys play.
Let's do this for next week. Me and you will put together our greatest 9 with let's put 2 starting pitchers, okay? And let's put a relief pitcher. Let's give the whole 9 next week with the manager. With the manager. All right, cool.
I'll put it on the sheet for next
week.
Cool,
bro. Yeah, and I did it last year where I had my top 5 in each, but I post on social media. I have to go over it, but I'm pumped for that.
All right, I'll put it on for next week's show sheet, and we'll do that. Top 9, 2 starters, and a reliever, and a manager.
And I'll even give you a sheet. We can bring it up side by side if you want.
Sure, absolutely. We'll put it together before the show, and we'll put it up there. And guys, if you're out there listening, we'd love to get your take on that as well. By all means, throw it up in the comment section. You can email me at tmaster218@aol.com. I will put up there. And by the way, George wants to say I had more than a few people reach out to me this week and tell me how much they loved the show last week. I got a message on a face message from a guy we grew up in the neighborhood with, and a bunch of people I work with and work around all say, hey, I saw the show. You guys did a nice job. You guys work well together. So I just want to throw it out there that initially we've got some good reactions on what we're doing here.
Good, pumped. We got Kevin today. We have Tommy John in the future already. He already committed, so we hopefully get some more guests. And I'm just pumped. Love talking baseball.
Yeah, and you never know where the show's going to go, Joe. We sit there, we start out we were just talking about the divisions. Next thing you know, we're all over, and that's fine. You know what? Let it go where it goes, and whatever pops in your brain. But before we get Kevin on, I want to get to the National League a little bit. We haven't touched on the National League, so let's go right back to postseason right now. So Atlanta has clinched. A disappointing Philly team. Obviously, the most disappointing team in that division, obviously, Joe, is the Mets. We talked about it last week. Real quick, what is, if you had to narrow it down to 1 or 2 things that killed the Mets this year, what was it?
Oh, man. I'm not sure it was anything on the field.
Okay. Interesting.
I think, we talked about it with our friend Paul Gill last week, how they, this fire sale, they got rid of people. But I'm not sure that, meaning off the field, as far as the manager, I think, Buck, I think Buck has 3 or 4 different managers of the year with great, but I'm not sure, like you were going to ask today, has the game passed him by? And I think he has to take a lot of responsibility.
Absolutely.
I haven't found him this year making the right decisions for the team a lot. I just very undecisive, almost like he's just going through the motions to get a paycheck. And I hate to say it about Buck, because I like him. I have a lot of fault there. Even the owner at times I haven't been crazy with. But, on the field, it's just like a lot of expectations with the staff. They're in the WBC, their closer goes down.
Mm-hmm.
And we all seen that during a celebration. It's like this Mets curse, and then they get rid of Robinson, and they get rid of Scherzer and Verlander. So I'm not sure, where it went wrong, but it's just a very disappointing, season for such high hopes.
Yeah, I mean, right now they're let's say they win 72 games. You're going to be 30 games under where you finished last season. And I thought the beginning and the end started last year when they got bounced in the playoffs by the Padres. I think this team is overrated. I think, well, Buck got a ton of a ton of credit for last year's team being so smart and playing fundamentally well. He's got to take the bullet in this year for not being that team. Their fundamentals were bad. They were a bad base running in the beginning of the season. The pitchers didn't show up. That's on Buck. If you're taking the credit for last year and how well you played, then you got to take the bullet this year. Do I think he survives? I don't. I think that you're getting a new president coming. This kid Stearns, who built the and I have a problem with it because you got Christian Yelich because they had a fire sale in that. I don't think there was any mystery that you get it, but regardless, he's got to come in and I think he's got to start it all over again. And I don't think Buck survives this one. And I think this is Buck's last shot. I think this was it. I think the game's passed him by, and I think I don't think he'll get hired for another spot again.
I think next year they have to have more consistency with your best player, Lindor. I mean, he's hot, he's cold.
Yeah.
Now he's doing better. And I know, like, it's always that people saying, not just because Paul said it, anybody says it. Oh, he's having a much better second half. Yeah, but the first half, was important too.
Right. Yeah. Well, you had a shitty first half, and your team's 40 games out of first place. So I don't care how well you play in the second half of the season. It's about consistency. You can't disappear the first half of the season and you turn around, your team's 18 games out of first place, and now you're going to tear it up in the second half when it's meaningless. It's meaningless to me. To me, it means nothing, and it just shows me that you're not the one. Listen, Lindor's a really good player. He may be a top 5 shortstop today. The Mets overpaid, and they're headed that way. I don't know if you read it. I'll bring it up to Kevin Kiernan when he gets on. But Mike Vaccaro, telling the Post, wrote an article that is mind-blowing. He basically says there's all the wrong reasons to sign Pete Alonso long-term, but the Mets should do it because the Met fan wants a long-term a career-long Met and a possible Hall of Famer, and here's who he is. And I said, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
If I'm Pete Alonso, I really gotta have a conversation with my is his agent Boris?
I don't know. I don't think it is. I didn't hear that, but I'd have to look that up.
Isn't that funny how he asked if the guy's agent is Boris? That's what Boris has become. But he's got to be careful because you got to figure he's been very productive. So I think he's going to get paid, and so does he want to get paid and not win, or does he want to get paid and win and be on a winning team? I got to be careful with him. Maybe the Dodgers could fall into him, or maybe the Braves, maybe even Houston. Does he want to win, or does he want? I always ask myself, these players, do they want to win or just get paid? He's not a guy who's his contract, so I think he's got to be careful here, and don't fall into that rut of just getting paid, and being one of the best on the team without winning.
Yeah, I think he has to ask himself, am I really in that category? He's going to ask for 10 years, $400 million. I'm going to guess. So what he really has to ask himself is, am I Judge? Am I Trout based on talent? And he's not. He's not even anybody who has that conversation. And I've heard this conversation in the past. I don't care. He's this generation's Dave Kingman. He's in that category. So he's got to ask that self of himself.
And these players, I wonder if they educate themselves with the team. Let's say the Rangers, who have money and been just paying guys. Let's say the Rangers want him, and they want to give him a deal. I wonder if these guys and their agents and even everybody around him look into the farm system of a Texas. Look to see who's coming up, because I want to go to a team where we're not going to win the next 5 years, but I'm going to make $400 million. Wow. Who do they have? Do they have a good staff? I wonder if they really look at the farm system. Who's coming up? I hope they do that. Because when you get a new job or something, you want to know who's working at this job. Do I get along with these people? Who's going to help me be better at that job? So I always think about that. Do these players look at the team and say, who do we got coming up, or who do we got around me?
Joe, I would love to say that they do. I guarantee they don't. It's all about the dollars and cents. It all comes down to who's going to pay you the most money. Listen. Otherwise, you shake your head and you say, "Why did that guy sign with that team?" Listen. Look, I'll give you the perfect example. Go back to Mike Trout. If you're Mike Trout, you're going to get the same money you're getting anywhere in baseball. You're gonna give $40-something million. I don't care where you go. Somebody's going to give you that kind of money or better. You sign with the Angels, who have put nothing on the field. Again, it's about being maybe loyal to his team, but to me, these guys don't care. It's about who's going to pay me the most money, and that's the end of it. And I don't like it, but again, I'm not being offered $40 million a year to work, build a building in Manhattan.
Right.
So I get offers all the time from people to move, leave my company. Hey, come make a couple bucks more. And I turn it down all the time because I stay where I'm comfortable. I stay where there's a future. I try to be that kind of guy. And you hope that when somebody in baseball's doing, or any sport, that they're looking at that, Joe. But the answer to you is I would say no.
I think Trout, he's from Toms River, New Jersey. I think even a little south of that. But I know he was always a Philly fan. So now they're talking about maybe him going to Philly, playing with Harper, and so we'll see. Yeah,
listen, we'll get to the free agents soon. There's a laundry list of guys who, the big one's going to be what happens with Ohtani. We'll see how that plays out. But now he's out the rest of the year with an oblique injury.
Right.
He's already got the elbow. They're talking about no surgery. Like Tanaka from the Yankees. He played his whole career with it, but he was never the same pitcher. Does this push him more to just being a one tool player? I mean, is he just going to hit from this point on and stay off the mound?
Yeah, I look at him and say, how many years can he keep doing this? How many years can he keep doing that? I don't know.
Well, you know what, Joe? He's only got to do it one more, and I'll tell you why. Because he doesn't even have to do it anymore. At this point, he's going to get maybe now with the injury, it could affect him. You know what? I have to change my tune. Before he got hurt with the elbow, he could have only had to do was one more year, and that's so that he could get $60 million or $50 million a year for being a two-way ball player, and then he can go and pick one or the other if he really wanted to. Now, I don't. How much do you think it affects him, Joe, in free agency? Does he still get $50 million with the elbow?
Yes, because I think people are out of their minds. I think they have this vision that they just see Ohtani as God. I think people's minds are already made up with him. I do. I think he's going to get. He might get $60 million a year. They said. I don't agree with that. But I think he's getting paid no matter what.
No, I agree. He's going to get paid. I wonder now though, is it going to be the contract that we thought? Like, he's what, 28? I think, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think he's older.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say he's 30. He's in that ballpark.
Okay.
Is he going to get a 10-year deal now coming off? He's got an elbow injury. We don't know if he's going to pitch next year at all. If he does, is he going to be the same pitcher, that he was prior to this? And 10-year deals are scary to begin with. So, to me, I say it all the time. I would never give any player 10 years. To me, 5, 7.
Right.
Even Mike Trout. Look at Mike Trout. I love Mike Trout. He's still young. I wouldn't give him 10 years. And look what's going on. The last 5 years, he barely plays.
But
so,
I guarantee Ohtani. I think who got the most? Like 4 something. Did Trout get the most or Harper?
No, I think isn't Judge highest paid right now with the Yankee deal?
I thought somebody got over $400 million for their career.
Yeah, I think Trout. No, Trout got it. Got it.
Ohtani's getting more than that. So I think he got 420. He wants to be more, he wants to be like 500 million. So if it's 10 years at 50, how do you give that guy a 10-year deal? I mean, but then again, you can't give him 7 at even 60 because that's less than Trout. I think he wants to be. He's going to be more than Trout. So I think we're looking at $500 million. I don't know how many years.
Yeah. Again, if he was a one-way player, if he was just a pitcher or just a fielder, would he be in this conversation? That's the question I ask. Now, I don't think he's the greatest pitcher I've ever seen. I think he's a great hitter.
Yeah.
So would he be in the conversation? Yeah. Is he as good as Judge? Is he as good as Trout? I don't know. I question it. How much longer he could do the two-way thing, I don't know. But it's obviously now, if he has surgery, he can't play. So now he's out altogether. So he doesn't have the surgery, and he just goes out there and plays the field. How much does that affect his arm? Now he's just a DH. So here's a guy who for the next 2 years may be substandard. And then what do you get when he comes back at 31, 32 years old? So
I know.
Are you really giving him $50 million for 10 years, Joe, based on what you see right now?
Oh, he's going to get. I don't agree with it at all because I'm not a huge Ohtani fan. I like him a lot. I just I need more than that in a player. I know that sounds silly. He's a two-way. I need more than him. I need that. I need more, but he's going to get paid.
I read something where the Angels are making $1 million more. I want to say it's a start every time he starts as a pitcher.
Sure.
Because they charge more money for advertising. They get more people at the games. They're merch. They're making $1 million more every time he starts a baseball game as a pitcher. So think about that. If he started 30 times a year, they'd be getting $30 million back just
more.
from
more.
Right. But think about it. So if you paid him 50, 30 of that is being paid by idiots like you and me who watch baseball and fall into the trap. So, to me, he's not coming East Coast. He's going to play on the West Coast, so he stays closer to Japan. It's going to be the Dodgers. I would be shocked if it wasn't. I think the Dodgers are setting themselves up to be the team that throws $50 million his way, and that's where he's going to wind up.
Right. So let's just say you gave this guy $60 million. Let's just play a little game.
Okay.
And like you just said, half of it is already in from because he's bringing that. So why not?
Yeah. Again, you're still counting on $30 million a year to pay that back because you're stuck paying it for 10 years. So you got to hope that you're going to get money. But tell me the 10-year deal that's worked out to this day. Tell me the 10-year deal that's ever worked out so far. The Yankees are going to eat the last 5 years of Judge's contract. There's no doubt in my mind that he's going to be either half of the ball player that he is right now, if he's even in baseball. Big guy, always getting hurt. I love Judge. I think he's a great player. He plays hard. He says all the right things. I'm all for it. But I would never give him 10 years. I wouldn't give any player 10 years. I just wouldn't do it.
No,
it's Chris, just. I think that's one of the biggest detriments that in baseball is that they were dumb enough to give out 10-year deals to guys like Cano, Pujols, Stan. Look at Stan's contract is an albatross around the Yankees' neck, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Yeah, no, crazy. I remember Cano. I remember Cano's deal going to Seattle. I think for $30 million more.
Yeah. And again, if you're the Yankees, I think that was one of the smarter moves that they made. They didn't give him the money, and it didn't work out. And the Mets ate that contract, and they paid them basically $20 million to not play baseball this year and last year.
Right.
Good for them. I mean, that to get the Diaz in that trade. So listen, I think Ohtani is a special player. He's doing something really well on both sides but people can't do. Am I going along with he's the greatest player I've ever seen? No. Is he Babe Ruth? No, he's not yet. I mean, maybe if he finishes his career, I'll buy into it. And is he the best player today? Is he the best player today, Joe, when he's healthy that you're watching today?
I guess there's a lot of young guys coming up, but he's one of them. Yeah.
Is he okay? So he's in your top 5, but if you turn around today and you said I had to start my team off next year with one of the best player from today's generation, who are you picking number 1?
Who's playing right now?
Right now, who's only this year, best player in the game right now that you got the fantasy draft and you get to pick number 1. Who's your number 1 pick? Because he's the best player out there.
I like Acuna Jr.
There you go. Yeah. Yep. And I'm not a fan of the guy. I think he's a douche. But but if I'm he's easily number 1. Then I'm starting thinking of Julio Rodriguez. I'm thinking of Ellie De La Cruz. I'm thinking of those guys. And not that Ohtani wouldn't be in my thought process, but I don't check him off as the best player because he does something really well on both sides. It just doesn't. And there's too much risk. You lose him as a pitcher, you just lost your best hitter. You lose him as a hitter, you lost your best pitcher. To me, it just opens up a bad avenue. It could be great, but it hasn't been. And Joe, his team is about 40 games under 500. So who cares? Right? Think about it. Who cares? He can pitch every day. His team still sucks.
But he's going to get paid. He's going to get paid.
Joe, there's no doubt that here on Diamond Talk, come next spring training when we open up and we have our spring training show, maybe we'll do it live from some stadium down in Florida. But we will be talking about the massive contract that Shohei Ohtani signed in the offseason. There's no doubt in my mind.
If I had a bet on it, I don't think he stays there. I think he goes to the Dodgers or even at Texas, who has money. But again, I think the Dodgers really is. I can see that with him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's the West Coast. I think he wants to be closer to Japan. I think it allows his family, his friends, all that stuff to be there. The time difference is a lot less. So I ultimately, if the money's now listen, if the Mets throw $70 million and everybody else is $50 million, can I see him coming to New York? Sure. Is there enough money to buy him here? Probably. But I think if all the money's equal, I've heard the Giants, the Padres, the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers have enough money to throw at him. And the other part of it is they're every year, and we're going to pop up on the Dodgers in a second. But they're perennial playoff World Series team. So if you're Ohtani and you're getting the money and you're going to pick a spot, out there. I mean, are you really going to San Diego or the Giants? No, you're going to the Dodgers.
Dodgers, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
So to finish our talk, Joe, about the National League, Milwaukee has been 20 games over 500. Consistently good team. The Cubs have had a kind of a resurgence. Your Cincinnati Reds, your future's bright. You got one of the best players in the game right now.
They started out really good this year. Yeah.
Then you're dropping down to the Dodgers and everybody else. So Joe, we before Kevin shows up, which I'm hoping is any second. Who in fact he just popped up. Joe, who's the best team who are the two best teams in the National League? Who are we going to watch in October?
Is Philly good? Can Philly make it in a wild card?
Let me see the wild card right now, Joe.
I like the Braves to win everything this year.
Hard to pick against them. Wild card in the National League. You got the division winners. Philly is atop of the wild card right now. The Cubs, Arizona, and Cincinnati. And then you got a whole laundry list. And why the Mets are still there, I can't figure that out. But I agree with you.
I think Philly can make some noise in the postseason, but I just see if I got to pick, the World Series this year. I'm even though I hate to do this because I hate the team, I'm going to go with the Braves and the Astros once again.
All right, we'll get to it, and Joe, we'll talk about it next week because Kevin's here. We're just getting right on, but
cool.
You got to give the Braves some props. They lose Freddie Freeman, and everybody's talking about it, and they bring in Matt Olson on a super trade, and the guy's hitting 52 home runs. So
I know.
Kudos to the Braves. You want to talk about an organization that does it right, boy? They have done it right for a long time. So, but
you mentioned a name who I love. I loved the Freddie Freemans of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. But Matt Olson's done a great job. Yeah. So, Joe, you intro our guest. I'll get him up.
Guys, be alive on Diamond Talk. Myself and Tommy Florio. Let's welcome to the show the great Kevin Kiernan. Kevin, Joe Gansas, and Tommy Florio. How are you, brother?
Doing great. How are you guys doing this morning?
Terrific.
We are great. Myself and Tommy, we appreciate the time and thank you for coming on the show today.
No, happy to do it. Just got back from church, so there we are.
Good. Guys, live with the great Kevin Kiernan. Kevin, for those of people, a lot of people know you. Those who don't know you, give us a background on your career up to date and what you've been doing.
Well, I've, for about 45, 47, probably 48 years now, been covering major sports. I'm one of the rare guys who's covered the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball as a beat writer. And then as a columnist, I covered the Bird Magic. I'm in The Last Dance. Football, I was there for all Parcells early on, and later, of course, with the Patriots and Brady. I saw Brady make his first start, but baseball's my main thing. I played baseball through high school, through college. Was a pretty good hitter. So I understand how hard the game is, and I think that's why I have great contacts. And that's it in a nutshell. Worked for many years for the San Diego Union Tribune, so I got the chance to talk to Tony Gwynn every day about hitting. And I was at the Dodger game with the big miracle home run. I was at the earthquake game. So you name it, I've been there. And then, of course, my many years with the Post.
Cool. Guys, a great Kevin Kiernan with us. We're happy to have him here. I want to talk a little bit about your time as a beat writer and specifically the Post. And what did your time at the New York Post teach you about sports that you didn't know before you started there?
Not much, because I got to be honest. I know a lot. I mean, that's why I'm good.
Right.
The Post was lucky to have me, and in 2020 they terminated my position, and I've heard it from a million people. It hasn't been the same since.
Right.
They miss people like me. They have some great writers. Don't get me wrong, but that was a decision made above me. I never worry about things, guys. So once that happened, I just moved right on, and now I write for Ball 9, and I have a podcast called Real Voices of the Game. The Post, the good thing about the Post is they gave me access. They sent me places. So they sent me places, and I came up with stories, and, but also the San Diego Union Tribune did the same thing for me. And then in San Diego, I also had a radio show. So, I was able to merge two worlds, and that enabled me to get in with ownership a little bit too in San Diego, Larry Lucchino and people like that. And I've always gotten along great with people in the game who know the game. Those who don't know the game or aren't in the game, I crush them because they deserve to be crushed. The game's become a joke. You're wearing a Cardinals uniform, and I don't know if you know it, their assistant hitting coach quit this past week to go take a softball coach job with University of Mississippi, and he's from Denmark. That's nothing against that guy. I don't know anything about him personally. Maybe he's a great coach, but the Cardinals stunk this year for a lot of reasons. Maybe that was one of them. They have too many people in baseball now who don't know baseball, from Manfred on down. Most of these GMs don't know anything. I did a big piece today at Ball 9. I urge everyone to go read it. It's on Brian Sabian. I have a great relationship with Brian. He won, his team won 3 world championships, of course, in 2010 with the Giants, 2012, 2014. Hadn't been done in the National League until the Cardinals did it in 42, 44, and 46. So, and he can't get a sniff for a job. Are you kidding me? It's a joke. The guy's running Chaim Bloom. In the column, I mentioned that I did more research in 2 minutes than the Red Sox did in their research of Chaim Bloom. I happened to be at a playoff game with the Tampa Bay Rays, and Chaim was about 30 feet to my right, and I don't know Chaim. We didn't go in the same circles. A lot of these, I call them nerds, they can't relate to people. They text, they put the phone to the ear when they see you coming. They can't carry on conversations, and a lot of them are introverts. And Chaim didn't really. He seemed like a nice guy from what I heard, but he didn't go out of his way to talk to people. And if you're in a front office, you need to talk to a lot of people to find things out. So anyway, long story short, I'm standing on the field at Tropicana. I don't care that much because I work for the Post and I'm just kind of covering the series. But I asked one of the owners who I'm friends with the Rays. I said, hey, by the way, this Chaim Bloom guy over there, he's 30 feet away from me. This guy, Chaim Bloom, are you guys going to miss him? Now, that's a pretty direct question. That's another good thing I did, fellas. I asked direct questions. If you listen to anybody asking questions nowadays, especially on TV, it's a long-winded question. It's if or and or. They try to answer the question by asking the question. A great tip for you guys and anybody, ask a short short, brief question, and you get an answer. So I asked him, I said, are you guys going to miss Hein Bloom? And he kind of chuckled. This guy had a good sense of humor. He's a Northeast guy, like I tell you guys are. And he goes, Kevin, we're not going to miss him. We're just going to hire 2 more Google guys. And but he didn't say the word. 2 more Google people.
Yeah.
So that's not that Hein Bloom wasn't a good analyst for what they needed him to do, and he was taught by some very good people in the Rays organization who know baseball. They kind of helped him matriculate, as one GM told me. But clearly he didn't bring any of that to the Red Sox. And I know they want to blame the ownership, and the ownership wasn't great. John Henry and Tom Warner. I knew Tom when he brought the Padres way back when. So they kind of cut the cost, but nobody cut costs like the Rays, and they win. So I don't want to hear that argument. I don't want to hear that excuse. So by me talking to this guy, I found out right then and there, the day, Hein would be officially announced as the new GM in a few weeks. But I knew in 2 minutes that this was nothing that the Yankees would have to fear. And I felt pity for the Red Sox fans because I knew what was going to happen. And here we are 4 years later. They're in last place, even though they have one of the better managers in the game in Alex Cora. So that's partly my answer.
Guys, we are talking to the great Kevin Kiernan live on Diamond Talk, myself and Tommy Florio. I got a direct question, very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Where or when did this great game of baseball go south?
Yeah, it's a great question. Great question. And it's very direct, like you say. And I'd love it for you to ask to Rob Manfred one day. It started going south. And again, I've been watching baseball intently since 1960 when I was 7 years old. And the Pirates came in and Bill Mazeroski hit that home run that crushed me when it hurt me so badly. And I'm sure your viewers can relate to this and you guys too, as fans. My father had to go out and buy I still remember, he bought me a white football. And my father was cheap. He didn't buy much stuff, So he brought me this, like the NFL was playing night games then, and they had these white footballs, and that kind of took my mind off the loss there. And so having that as a background, I love the game right on through. It was fantastic. My time in San Diego, the 70s were incredible. The athletes, same thing in the 80s. They took pride in their job. They put the ball in play. The 90s, you had the steroid. I was there for the whole, the whole Sosa McGuire thing. I think I still have. Hold on one second. Yeah, I still have you probably can't see it, but I have my 62 emblem that they gave for the media. So the 98 kind of resurrected baseball, even though it was the steroids. Then you had the Yankees, you had the Yankees all those times, and they were playing great baseball, great team baseball. So we're okay. Now we're into 2001, 2002, 2003. Great win for the Marlins. Jack McKeon is a good friend of mine. Jack made one of the ballsiest moves ever in the history of baseball and really doesn't get credit for it. Game 6 on 3 days rest, he started his ace, and he wasn't afraid to start him. Because he felt, and I remember him telling me before that game, I said, Jack, why are you doing this? Because all the nerds were seeping into the game now, the analytic guys. And they wanted him to give Josh another day of rest and have him ready for Game 7 if they needed him. But Jack said, no, if we lose Game 6, we're not winning Game 7 in Yankee Stadium with the Ghosts. It ain't happening. So he knew he had to win Game 6. I think there was a shutout. So 2003 was good. The Red Sox, I was there for Aaron Boone's home run in 2003. I was there for the comeback in 2004 when the Red Sox came back. So we're still good. Probably up until mid 2015 area, right when Sabian was still winning. Because I want to make this clear too. Sabian believes in numbers and analytics. Most good baseball people do, but he keeps them in their place. So if you remember, San Francisco, they had a lot of things going on. They had good baseball men, but they also had good analytics, and he used that stuff. Tech savvy San Francisco, you got to, you're right there. So I think it really started going bad. COVID sent it over the top. But before that, it was really getting bad. All these young Theo types were getting jobs. And again, just a point of reference, when I was with the Padres, Theo was the assistant PR guy. He wasn't the PR guy. He was public relations guy. He was the assistant. And I told him, I said, Theo, you're going to be a GM by the time you're 30. He said, Kevin, how can you say that? And I said, because Larry Lucchino loves to bring someone along, and you're his guy. He's going to bring you along. Eventually, that happened. And that's another story in itself, because Theo, he won the couple championships there, but he had a lot of help from people that you don't hear much from, baseball people who really saved his skin a lot of places. Same thing in Chicago. Joe Madden did a great job to help Theo out. Theo gets all the credit. All of a sudden, all the Theo tree grows, and you have all these GMs that really don't know what you're doing. They have one simple game plan, fellas. Let's lose, get finished in last place or close to last place, get good draft picks, get some talent, and then we have assets. They're actuaries. They're not baseball GMs. They're risk management guys. So it's really started to go bad there. And now with Manfred and new rules, what tipped it? The one tipping point I would say would be the fake runner and the extra innings, because that created all our lives, guys. You had to get to second base. You had to earn it somehow, or maybe they made a mistake. Like the Yankees win a game the other day because the sad sack Pirates, who great writers have said, oh, they're going to come on. They're 5 years. They're going to win a championship in 5 years. Stop it. They can't even turn a double play to win a game against the Yankees. And so you had all this going on, and they ruined the game. The fake runner comes in. Now the players are getting lazy. They know they get fake runners. They don't have to worry about playing I was at that Padre doubleheader. I think it was in 2003 that ended at 5 a.m. in the morning in Philadelphia. So that it really started with the fake runner. I would say is really when it really went totally off the top.
Guys, we are live. Tommy, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, Kevin. I'm a big fan. I've read the New York Post since I'm 12 years old every day. I used to read the other rag in town until a really bad Mike Lupica article turned me off a few years ago. So I haven't picked up the Daily News in about 6 or 7 years.
Lupica has a way of doing that.
Well, Lupica, again, the Daily News has turned into everything being about being woke and being about race, and I don't have time for that. Sports should be beyond that. To stay on the topic just a little bit longer on this, I always think back to the 90s and what built the Yankees into the powerhouse they become was the GM, and it was guys like Stick Michael and Bob Watson. And I think where it turned when we're talking about this, the analytics, is when guys who never played the game got into that seat and never, based it all on opening up a book and what they read in a book about what a guy did, 3 years ago on a Thursday night in a cold weather, So to me, I think that's where the game changed, when they took the baseball guy out of the front office and the eyes that watch the game.
Well,
would you agree with that?
Yes, and actually I addressed that in my column today, Saves to the Rescue at ball9.com, BALLNINE.com. And Sabian was the guy who brought in the Core Four,
Yeah.
Stick wanted to be the GM in making the moves, but he didn't want to be the front man. So you had to Stick Michael, Brian Cashman allegiance. And Brian gets a lot of, and again, he was there, so you got to give him some credit.
Sure.
But it Stick Michael and Bob Watson, all these guys, they did their job. Bill Livesey, I could go on and on. And all those guys are probably out at the end. Stick, of course, passed, and then it went completely south with the Yankees to where we are now, where they're the most. Yep. I would say this is the most non-athletic Yankee team I have ever seen, even through the hard clock years. And people are fooling themselves if they think because the Yankees have won 16 of 19 and won some series against some decrepit teams that everything's all right with the Yankees. And your kids have trouble too. I mean, I like young players. They should have called these young kids up early. They locked themselves into the Bowers, like you said, what they used to do, like a player like Donaldson. And they don't take in the human element and the heart and what it takes and how hard this game is. And also, it's different seasons. You have your regular season, you have the stretch run, and then you have the playoffs. So you got to step up for each of those. And the other thing, fellas, is they allowed the players to get hurt. Remember, they were going to fix all the injuries and the pitching, and there wouldn't be any more Tommy John. I remember Sandy Alderson, and I like Sandy. Sandy tried. I will give Sandy credit. But I remember Sandy standing in the clubhouse in Port St. Lucie saying, "We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to stop these Tommy John injuries." And what's happened? They've gotten worse because it's all velocity. Guys who don't know the game, it's all velocity. And one other point I want to make real quick because it's in my head and I want to get it out there because nobody's talking about this. These idiotic pitchers now, the way they throw and sell out on every pitch, they don't fight back. They leave themselves open to get killed. And a Yankee pitcher got hit in the head the other day. They can't field the position. They can't command the baseball. They don't pitch anymore. They're throwers. The whole heavy ball thing, it's a joke. And so I agree on everything you say there. And it's sad. The problem is fans like us are leaving, and they've kicked the guys who know baseball. They've shut them aside. Except for the Rays. The Rays have done a good job in player development because they keep really good baseball people on staff down there. They love working for the Rays. And that's why the Rays are good, by the way. That's why the Rays are good. So that's where we are in the game today. And unfortunately, it's a sad thing. But I would love to see it come back. And that's why I think if a guy like Sabian gets a chance, it could come back. It's come back a little bit in Texas with Bochy. You got some. Dusty Baker did a great job last year. He had to fight to keep Pena on top of the lineup. He had to fight for the starting pitchers to go deeper in games because that's another thing they want. They don't want nobody to go deep anymore, and it's a joke what they've turned starting pitching into. Yet they pay these guys $43 million a year, and they don't let them go deep into the game. So everything
pitch five innings of baseball. Yeah,
it's sad. It's really sad because we saw and we know and how great the game can be. And the base running, another thing. I got to get this off my chest.
Sure.
Everybody, I talked to Roger. Remember Roger Cedeno?
Sure.
I talked to him recently, and I said, Roger, and he was a good base stealer. I said, how many bases would you steal in this new rules? And he said, Kevin, 100. And I wouldn't get caught once. So that's how easy it is. So don't go crazy over Acuna doing his thing. I mean, he's a great player. But by the point on the Braves, I want to make this because you guys said a good thing before I jumped on. Look at that Braves dugout. Look at the experience in that Braves dugout with that coaching staff compared to the Yankees. Let's go right to the Yankees. Compare it to the Yankees or the Giants, who are 13 coaches. Some of them never even suited up. The uniforms fit them funny. And I watched the Giants lose a game the other day because the left fielder could not make a throw 200 feet to home plate, and the pitcher did not back up properly. So 2 runs scored as the ball skipped past the catcher, and they lost on a walk-off loss because they don't do the fundamentals anymore. I sincerely believe, and this sounds crazy, but I sincerely believe this. If there was another league that came along, not with the same players because you can't pay these guys because some of them are so good you can't afford them. But if you played serious baseball, regular baseball, made it a nice outing, people would go to I would call it the Field of Dreams League. I think there really should be something like that where they play real baseball.
Guys, talking to the great Kevin Kiernan. On the Yankees, not a Yankees fan. Tommy's a Yankee fan. I'm a Reds fan all my life. The Reds in the 70s. What do the Yankees organization, Kevin Kiernan, have to accomplish to get back to not only producing a winning team on the field, but regaining the trust in their fans?
Well, I think the fans are pretty much a lost cause, and that may upset some people, but they'll go to games no matter what. It's like a night at Broadway. These fans going to games for the most part. They're not there to see a real baseball game. They're there to be seen, to take a selfie, have a steak, to do whatever they do. The real baseball fans are fed up with the Yankees, and of course the bleacher creatures lead that way. But even then, they're into their thing. So. The fans are going to come no matter what to see it. This year they proved it. They're getting 40,000 a night for crappy baseball. Are you kidding me? And but what they have to do is Cashman has to get away from his total analytical ways, bring some more baseball people back, teach baseball. How about Anthony Volpe's swing? Anthony Volpe is a good, talented kid. Don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But like a scout told me yesterday, he falls down on nearly every swing now because he's lifting and separating with that stupid Yankee way of what they got all their minor leaguers doing. Euclid, I was watching the Red Sox game the other day, and after one of the Yankees' young guys struck out or whatever, he said, boy, you can really see the mantra that's being taught in the Yankee organization. Sell out, lift and separate. So they face any kind of good pitching. Those guys aren't even getting close to getting hits. And even the kids that are up now, usually when kids come up, they have a spurt where they don't know what they're doing. The opposing pitchers don't know what they're doing, so they test them with fastballs or whatever. And they start off usually pretty okay. But, they won a game again last night, but it's the Pirates. Doesn't count, the AAA team. And the averages of the young kids don't look promising either, to be honest. And Volpe, if Volpe doesn't start using the whole field, he'll never succeed. So he needs to wake up and change his style, go back to what he was as a hitter, even in high school. So to answer the question, the Yankees have to get real instructors in the minor leagues who know what they're doing and teach these kids real baseball. They have to learn to run the bases. They're the worst base running team I've seen. Gleyber Torres thinks he's invisible.
Oh.
Gleyber's a great hitter, but that's all he does, and that's what most of them all do now. They just work on hitting.
And he's a real streaky hitter, very streaky. That's the problem.
And how about the plays? He'll fall asleep at second base.
Oh,
the ball go right past him and everything's a hit now too, fellas. You notice that too. No more errors in baseball because Manfred wants the average to go up. I had a column last week. And I wrote about this early in the year. There's only 9 hitters hitting over 300 in major leagues at the time. But here's the scary part: there were only 18 hitters hitting over 280. So they don't even care about average anymore. Batting average matters. Average matters.
Kevin, I was talking to Joey before the show, during the show early, where everybody was all over Stanton's home run last night. Before the at bat, he was batting 194. What do I care if he hits a September home run in a meaningless game and he's hitting 194? And why is that acceptable today? And it's not just him. I saw an article today in the Post, Mike Vaccaro, where he says the Mets have to sign Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso would be this generation's Dave Kingman if he was playing 30 years ago. Kingman was ran out of baseball for batting 240 and hitting 40 home runs, and Pete Alonso didn't want to give him a 10-year, $400 million deal. Why is the game changed so much? Exit velocity, velo. Do I care how fast a ground ball gets through shortstop? But I got to hear that. What is that? That is the major problem. Is they're selling to the young kids about how far and how fast the ball leaves instead of the fundamentals of the game. Why is that so important today?
Well, it's a measurement game today, and I don't have a cat, but I don't know if any of you guys have cats. But basically, just think of most of these GMs as cats, okay? I'm going to put this into something that everybody can relate to. Now, you take a little laser light and you point it around, and that cat will go after it, So that all those things you just mentioned, exit velocity, the pitcher speed, spin rate, that's little lasers that these GMs follow. They're cats. They don't know the real essential of the game. And that's until they change, it's not going to change because that's what they're selling. It's like a scout told me the other day, you can't have a conversation with when you ask these guys, hey, like you'll go down and see a pitcher and hey, what'd you think of the pitcher? And you know what the first thing they'll say? Oh, his exit velocity was blah, 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 blah. They don't see the faults in the windup. I'm watching the Yankees earlier this year. Carlos Rodon, he's all over the freaking place. He separates when he takes the ball out of his glove. He's late, so as a result, he's late releasing the ball. All these things I see, and again, I'm just a writer. And all of a sudden, to his credit, Jeff Nelson all of a sudden starts saying it. He sees what I see, and he says, "I don't know why Rodon, they don't fix that because the pitching coaches that they have now don't know mechanics. It's really that simple. So it's beyond fundamentals. It's beyond mechanics. They have a narrow view of how the game should be, and they're all excited about measurements. And one other point too, so people understand this, we're giving a good education here. The radar gun is different. The old Nolan Ryan throws as hard or faster than these guys. The radar gun now measures out of the hand. The old radar gun measured across the plate. Okay, so that's your 5 miles difference. So all these things were wrong in the game, and they need to fix them.
Again, that's Kevin Kiernan. That's Joe Gans's South Florida Diamond Talk. We're talking baseball, which we do every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. So we're glad to have everybody tuning in, and we're really glad to have Kevin with us. And please check out ball9.com, guys. I learned about it this week. Kevin, Mount Chum, fungos. I mean, just strike to the heart of a guy like myself and Joe. These are things that we talk about, and it's a great website if you're a baseball fan. He tells it like it is, and I love the attack on the nerds. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little more of Kevin's great mind, because I'm sitting here, I'm just immersed in everything he's about. Just great job by you, Kevin. Thank you once again for coming on the show. I don't want any rule changes. I never did. I don't want any more. It drives me crazy. But one that I really loved, and now it's gone. We talked about it last week, and I forgot where Tommy is on this. I love the shift. I love it. I personally love the shift because it's your team, do what you want. Now we can't do the shift. So, and the shift should be this. You got the whole infield playing on the right side. You got a guy making $40 million, a lefty. He can't lay one down the third. He can crawl to first. These rule changes, your take on them, I don't want any.
Well, I'm gonna bring this in a couple of things that I want to talk about. I'm gonna bring it back to real life. Most of these GMs now and presidents of baseball operation. By the way, the Tigers have a guy who never even played baseball. He played lacrosse at UCLA, club lacrosse. Now, again, you don't have to play the game to know the game, but you got to be around the game. Frank Cashin was a sports writer, and he built a championship team. So I don't want to people misunderstand that but if you're around the game, you learn things. So these guys, I agree with you. I enjoyed the shift because I liked watching a guy like Jeff McNeil abuse the shift and hit, win a batting title. That's baseball, or like you say, dropping down a bunt. As for I got to respond to Alonso. I like Alonso, and power is hard to come. The true power is hard to come by nowadays. But here's what I say about Alonso. He needs to be reined in. He's a chocolate lab. He's a chocolate lab playing baseball. And if you let him get too far away, next thing you know, he'll be halfway out in the lake chasing a stick, So you need to have him get back to, like you say, when he was hitting the ball off fields, his average was okay. You got to make average important again for guys like that. So the shift was a good one. And now they are shifting now, if you notice now, but it's the third baseman who's now shifted.
Right.
Third baseman is no longer a third baseman. How many hits have you guys seen late in games down the line now, because nobody covers the lines like they did for 100 years?
Oh, yeah. Baseball. Happened last night in the Yankee game. Yeah.
There you go. I didn't watch and also a great point on Stanton. I didn't see the home run, but I guarantee you it was with the pitcher grooved the pitch.
Yes.
Back. Because Stanton swings the same place every time. And these idiotic pitchers, because they don't, again, it's a small point. These teams don't have advanced scouts anymore. So they don't tell they have an advanced scout nerd looking at a TV or a video or an iPad, but they're not there watching them like the real scouts used to do. And by the way, shame on the Nationals for getting rid of all their scouts this week and development people. But So these pitchers come in. I watched the Pirate. That was probably the last Yankee game I watched this year because it was so pathetic. The Pirate pitcher came in 2 nights ago, had no clue where he was throwing the ball. He's supposed to close. He's all over the place. He walks 3 guys, double play. He gets out of it with a double play ball. They throw it away. But there's no command to the pitches. There's none. And they let these guys, and the manager sits there like a bump on the lock. No, this kid was in such trouble from the first pitch to the last pitch. Nobody came out to talk to him, to slow him down. Another rule shift, Joe.
Oh, that's, yeah.
The pitch clock has screwed up pitching too, by the way, because most of these pitchers are idiots and they can't realize, hey, I need to slow it down a little bit. Let me do some tricks, throw the ball out, do this. They just keep going, and I think that's also contributed to the injuries because guys are out of shape now for the most part, and they can't. Later in games too. You see with the Yankees starting pitching a lot of times they fall apart later because they're in such bad shape. I was talking to someone yesterday within the Yankees, and they don't run anymore. You don't always have to run. Jim Cott was a bike rider. Nolan Ryan was a bike rider, but you got to do something to get your legs going. One other point about Jim Cott, we talked about this on my podcast, Real Voices of the Game. People don't realize this, but Jim was one of the best disco dancers in the history of disco dancing. So he would go out dancing almost every night. That's where his stamina came from. 25 years in the majors, Hall of Fame. So all those things have been lost. They've all been lost. They're not coming back. I really feel that the game is almost it's Thelma and Louise heading for the cliff. And will somebody hit the brakes? I don't know. That's where we are. And I agree 100% with you on the shift. Let teams do what they want. But the elites in baseball, they all come from Harvard and places like that, much like the elites in the real world, want to run your life. So they want to run all the rules past you. You can only do what they say within their boundaries. And that's what they've done to baseball. And Manfred, who doesn't like baseball, clearly, I mean, we all remember the picture from a couple of years ago when there was the work stoppage. He was practicing his golf swing. He loves the golf, and more power to him. He likes the golf, but he doesn't like baseball. So the other problem is you have all the people in charge of baseball who don't really like baseball. You have the front offices run by kids who don't know what the hell they're doing. They just look at numbers, and very few teams. I will say this though: the team that usually wins the World Series is the team that plays baseball, and it happened last year with Dusty. And if go back all the Nationals, I remember talking to McKeon, he was an advisor for the Nationals, and he had a strong talk with Davey Martinez. You got to be tough on these guys. You got to do this. You got to do that. Lo and behold, he does that. Nationals win the championship. So the team that usually wins plays the most baseball, and then it's completely forgotten. And they treat every game, especially October games, like it's a game in the middle of it's a Tuesday game against the Pirates and Royals. That's basically how they look at it.
Tom, you can go real fast. You mentioned Jim Cott. I think Greg Maddux and Jim Cott have the most gold gloves by pitches. I think Cott has about 15. I think Maddux has about 18. That art is lost by a pitcher also.
Well, if I'm a pitcher, that's the only way it'll change is if the players start fighting back. And I think the Players Association, do you think Marvin Miller and the predecessor and the people after him would have allowed baseball to change the rules so much and put these pitchers are in jeopardy. I don't care what you say. If you throw and you have your glove is nowhere to be found. Your glove is over here somewhere out of camera view. And you're tilted usually. You have no defense. Whereas Maddux and Cott, they finished. They were right there. You can't be. Everybody doesn't have to be them, but you at least got to defend yourself a little bit. So they sold out in every possible. Baseball is sold out, and by selling out, I mean selling out in a bad way on everything with the game. And you'll never see. I was encouraged by one thing the other day. I'm going to do a positive thing here. Peterson from the Mets finally turned it down a few notches. And instead of trying to throw everything 96, 97, he turned it down to 92, 93. And what happened, fellas? He had command, and he pitched well the other day. It's got to be driving Buck crazy with some of the things going on in baseball. And we'll see where the Mets go. But I don't see a future there simply because, first of all, the owner came in saying he's going to win 3 to 5 years. It's not hedge funding. Let's go, fellas. So he that was ridiculous. Anybody who knows the Braves, the Braves have talent coming through. Quick Braves story. One of their great instructors who was let go, he had Albies. He had all these guys in the minor leagues. He also had them in the spring training. And so one day he noticed that things had changed and they were kind of trying to crush everything, and he asked one of the nerds. He said, "Well, what happens if we get a big playoff game where we got to hit the ball to the other side, or we got to do this, we got to do that, or maybe drop a bunt?" And the nerd, who was now in charge of things, said, "We'll just do it." That's what they think. They think it can just be done. They don't understand that it's not easy like that. And to the Braves' credit, they have enough people who countered the nerd, who know real baseball, and the Braves do a little. What did the Braves do this year, fellas? They cut down their strikeouts. That's why they're even better than they were. What did the Astros do last year to win the World Championship? They cut down their strikeouts. Striking out matters. And as for the Yankees, I want to see a change in the Yankees' approach. I want to see Aaron Judge, who I have tremendous respect for, go into Hal and Cashman, go to them after the season and say, "Let's get this right. Let's start playing baseball again. I'm here for the next number of years. Let's go. You told me we we're going to do this. Let's go. Enough with this malarkey."
Well, they got to decide. I'm sorry, Joe. You have to decide on a philosophy change first, and that's the biggest problem. 2017, I thought they were getting it right, and then they traded for Stanton, and they changed the model, and it became base-to-base baseball.
That was Cashman.
Yeah, 100%. That was the worst trade, and he's done some bad ones. That has been the albatross on this team because it's restricted the payroll, it's restricted the lineup, and Stanton may be the most overrated player of this generation, and by far. But I do want to
let me throw this at you. Just think if the Mets got their act together. Imagine if the Mets got their act together and we're in the playoffs this year. Just think about the heat on the Yankees that would be.
Oh, sure.
But the Mets have gotten so crappy themselves that there's no extra heat on the Yankees. Hal Steinbrenner better wake up. Here's a quick Hal story that puts it in perspective. I did a piece on Hank and Hal, and Hank had his flaws, but I liked Hank. He passed away. But Hank was more like his dad, competitive. So I spent time with Hank, and then I went over to Hal's office, and he was very good. He gave me plenty of time. But I asked him, again, direct question. I said, "Hey, Hal, what's the difference between you and Hank?" Simple question. And to his credit, Hal gave me a great answer. He said, "Well, when my dad would bring over like the Notre Dame football players for dinner or something like that, because George would do things like that. If somebody's in town in Tampa, all of a sudden, boom, there's 2 or 3 offensive linemen eating dinner with the Steinbrenners." And Hank and Hal said Hank would go in the backyard and play football with those guys, throw the football around. Me, I would get on my little, and he had one of those high handlebar bikes. He goes, "I get on my bike with all my Star Wars toys and ride around the neighborhood." That's the difference between Hank and Hal. Hal loves to be above it. He's a pilot, smart guy, but he doesn't understand it. The biggest joke is that Hal has to bring an outside unit in to understand what's going on with the Yankees. He can't see any of this himself. He doesn't have anybody in the organization who's trustworthy to say, "Hey, Hal, we got to get rid of this guy, that guy." It's a joke what we're doing. He's got to bring in a outside organization to evaluate. So you tell me where the Yankees are going to get better, because what's going to happen is they're going to stay the course. They're going to come up with some mumbo jumbo, but because of this winning streak, they won't change much.
I would agree with that.
Stadium goes to the Red Sox. Yankees are in huge trouble.
I agree. And listen, the brain trust there needs to change, and the organization needs to change. And I don't think it's going to happen this year. It probably won't change till he gets rid of Cashman, but we'll see. I got one last one, Kevin. I want to thank you. First off, again, I read your columns for years. I am a fan of Ball 9, and I will be a regular visitor to that. I want to ask one last question. You did bring up Buck Showalter, and while I think Buck is a great baseball mind, last year he got a ton of credit. The Mets played great baseball. They were fundamentally sound. He had all these little rules that he had them queued up on. But doesn't this year fall on Buck to a certain extent? This team played bad baseball. It had an uninspired baseball. He stuck with Vogelback way too long and way too, he kept these young kids from coming up and playing. And you're seeing some of the differences with Maurizio and some of these guys. Now, maybe they weren't ready then. But doesn't this year fall? While he got a lot of credit last year, doesn't Buck get a lot of the blame for this year? And should he be on the block at the end of this year?
I believe in responsibility in teams, and definitely managers deserve credit or blame. Aaron Boone, I don't want to hear any garbage. He let it get away from him. He doesn't hold the players accountable. Buck fell into that trap this year. I'm sure there's outside forces, Billy Epler forcing him to play certain people. And I was not a big fan when they hired Epler. If you go back and check my columns, I said this is a mistake. And again, I know baseball. I know Billy for many years. He's good in a certain role, but he can't build a pitching staff. Look at the Angels pitching during all these years and check out their ERAs. Suddenly the Mets have the same issue. It doesn't just happen. So Buck needed to put his foot down more with the owner, and maybe and I was around spring training when Mauricio was lighting it up, and I thought he'd come out of spring training with them simply as maybe a lift, and if he struggles, you send him back down. But he gave them energy, fellas. That's one of the biggest things that I've noticed with teams. They don't have energy because everybody's into their iPad. They're into their individual work. There's no more team fundamentals. And speaking of this is what shocks me a lot with Buck. He's a fundamental genius. I mean, he has everything figured out, and they made some terrible plays this year. So that tells me either they hamstrung him or he lost interest. I can't imagine him losing interest. I think it's almost a thing. Here's what I think happened. This is my gut feel. I think Buck just basically was told a lot what to do, and instead of fighting back, he said, "Okay, you want this? Here you go, take it." And he had to show them that their ideas were so off. He had to play what they wanted to play, and he kind of maybe in the hopes of in the future setting the ship right again. And it's like in spring training, and again, you gotta read between the lines with Buck. So one day all the media's in, and the media's the media nowadays. They're told where to go, blah blah blah, and this and that. I always want my own path. So I waited for the rest of the media to leave. And Buck was not whining. He was legitimately complaining about some of the stupid rules, but he didn't go over the top. So short question. I said to him, Buck, let me ask you a question about the rule changes. How come there are no managers on the committee? And his eyes lit up like you wouldn't believe. And he gave me that look like you nailed it right there. The people making the rules aren't even managers. They're mostly offensive guys, so they're going to make it for the offensive players. And so I think Buck knows exactly what's going on. I think in my heart of hearts, I believe it was like, okay, Billy, you want this guy? Here he is. Because don't forget, Billy signed Vogelback.
Sure.
And I mean,
but Buck
nothing
played
against Vogelback, but I go all the way back to Smokey Burgess, so I remember fat players, And but Vogelback, he's good at he'll foul the ball if he'll do this. But how many times have we seen him take strike three because it's a little bit off or it's not where he wants it? That's another thing that's happening in baseball. They got to get their ace swing in. So instead of just like Tony Gwynn hitting that 5-6 hole, it's got to be their ace swing. I asked Tony once. I said, Tony, could you hit 30 homers a year? He goes, Kevin, I could hit 30 homers a year easy. Tomorrow I could start. He goes, but I'd lose 30 points in my batting average. So I'm not going to do that. And so, but all these guys have done that. So that's where we are in baseball. I hope Buck hangs on, and I hope Buck gets back to being Buck, and I hope they allow him to be Buck. And also the other thing is, pitching is tough nowadays, and you got to have a really good pitching coach and people preparing these players. So that's another big issue.
Guys, we have been treated today, honored and treated to have a great mind with us, Kevin Kiernan. Kevin, where can everybody check you out if they want to do that?
Well, I'm at all the usual places. I'm on Twitter, AMBS_Kiernan, KERNAN, ball9.com. I write twice a week, and like you guys said, I write what I view to be the truth. I don't take any garbage. I have people calling me who know the game, I'm in touch with a lot of people still, all the time. And also, the third thing I do now is I have a podcast usually out on Mondays or Tuesdays. It's called Real Voices of the Game. It will do everything. And again, all my stories aren't critical of baseball. I did a story last week. I found a guy who cleans baseball graves. and has been doing it for like 2 years now. And he brings respect to these graves that were forgotten, and some of it are big names that we know. And
Wow.
so I'll have a feature too. So it's called Real Voices of the Game. This week we had on Frank Koppenbarger. He was the longtime clubhouse man with the Phillies and traveling secretary. The stories he told about the Phillies and what really went on with Dykstra and Johnny Kruk. I'll leave you with this because I like to leave with humor. John Kruk's locker was the messiest thing in the world. And I know Krucky from the Padre days. I'd come back from a game at 2 a.m. with Bob Nightingale, the other writer who was working for the LA Times at the time. And we'd hit the hotel elevator, and all of a sudden Kruk would be there bringing in pizzas, 3 pizzas at 2 a.m. So I know all about Krucky, but he had the dirtiest locker. And he's a great guy. Kruk's a great guy, by the way. He knows his baseball inside and out. So they cleaned out his locker one year at the end of the year, and they found all kinds of stuff, garbage and stuff like that. But they also found like a half of a Philly cheesesteak, that had been basically mummified. And this is the great part. They also found a $20,000 check that he got from like Franklin Sporting Goods for wearing their batting gloves, just sitting in the back of the locker, and it lost. So that was on our podcast this week. So we run the gamut. Jim Cott does a podcast on our network. We have Will George and Mark Wiley, 2 great pitching coaches. So we got a lot going on.
Well,
I'm gonna check that out.
From myself and Tommy, we say thank you. You've made our show better today, and I hope down the line we can maybe do this again if you have some time for us.
Absolutely.
All right,
Much
Tom.
appreciated.
Kevin,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm a big fan of your writing, and we hope to have you back. And I didn't even get a chance to talk to you about the '70s and Munson and all that. Yeah. So next time I can't wait to put you back. Yeah, please.
There's plenty to talk about, and we can even do some NBA and football, and we'll see what's going to happen with the Giants.
We'll boy, big game today. Big game today. Big game.
If they don't win today, the season's over.
Yeah, 100%. I've been choking on it all week. You got to win. I don't care if it's won by 1 point. You cannot come home Thursday night and face the Niners at 0-2. It just can't happen. So,
Kevin, we thank you so much. Thanks, Kevin.
Take care, Kevin.
See you next time.
Kiernan.
Bye-bye.
You got it.
Great stuff, Dick. Great stuff. Woof.
Yeah. Great. That's a guy I could talk to all day, Joe. As a baseball fan, that is a guy I can talk to him. Well, I've read the post again for over 40 years, and Kevin was a guy I read with Vaccaro and Serby and all those guys. I read the post every day, and Kevin's one of those guys that you want to talk to about baseball. He just knows the game, doesn't hold back. You gotta love it.
He doesn't lack confidence. I love it.
No, he does not. Listen, this was a great one, Joe.
Good stuff.
Yeah, Tom, you got the end. Go for it.
Guys, show. We appreciate everybody checking us out. It'll be on social media all week. We thank our special guest today, Kevin Kiernan. Just great stuff. We have so much more to talk to him about, so maybe we get him on maybe next month sometime. But Tom, great show, bro.
Yep, Joe, great job by you. Great question to open it up with, and just another 3 hours flew by. So looking forward to Sunday next week already, Joe.
Thanks, Tom.
You got it, guys. Everybody, we'll see everybody next Sunday right here from Diamond Talk Studios. That's Joe Gans. I'm Tom Florio. And everybody have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Joe, have a good one. I'll talk to you after the air.
All right. Thanks, guys. Talk soon. Thanks, brother.